Aye.
Hi, Ernie. Where are we in the Tzurba?
Okay. Are we 253? Did we start the mistakes?
I think
No. We started this. Right, we did the Ata Choyne, we did all of that.
You're on 259, no?
259, that's right. Tashlumin on Shabbos. Thank you, Abe. In an earlier Shir, volume 11, Shir 6, we learned the basic halachas of Tashlumin. Replacement Amida, a person recites after having missed one of the tefillos. In theory, regardless of the tefillah or day of the week, a person who has missed one tefillah may replace it by reciting the next tefillah twice. During the week, it's simple enough, as the texts of all the tefillos Amida are identical. The only standardized difference in Nusach Ashkenaz is the text of the last bracha. At Shachris, we say Sim Shalom. At Mincha Mar, we say Shalom Rav. But they both conclude with the identical formula, Hamavarach Samo Yisrael B'Shalom. So the Mishnah Berurah rules that one fulfills the obligation even when inadvertently reciting the wrong version. According to most editions of Nusach Sfard and Sephardic, the text is always Sim Shalom. The prevalent custom in Eretz Yisrael is that Sim Shalom is also recited in Nusach Ashkenaz during Mincha of Shabbos. So, in other words, otherwise, the nuschos of the Amida are exactly the same. Now, on Shabbat, the central bracha of each tefillah has a distinct text, right? We say Atakidashta by Ma'ariv, we say Yismach Moshe, we say Tikanta Shabbos by Musaf, Ato Echad by Mincha. There's some have asked, when someone recites Tashlumim on Shabbos, because you missed one of the tefillos, is it correct to recite the same text twice? Or should one recite the makeup tefillah according to the text of the tefillah which was missed? That means, let's say you missed Shachris, and now you're in Musaf, and you're going to do Tikanta Shabbos. Rather than say Tikanta Shabbos twice, maybe when you do the Tashlumim for Shachris, you should say Yismach Moshe. That's what they're asking. Rav Avram David Warman, which is the author of the Yeshel Avram, writes that the person should recite the text of the tefillah which was missed. Chole shelo haya echol lispol Shachris umusaf to Shabbos Kodesh. Amarti lo sheyispalo samach lemincha ktana musaf v'achar kach mincha. That means he could still daven musaf. Let's say he got out of the hospital, he was sick, and only now he feels better. So right before the time of mincha ktana daven musaf, then mincha, and then v'achar shachris l'tashlumim v'yomer yismach Moshe. Ka'et lo ra'iti mufrash ken sheyomer yismach b'tashlumim. He doesn't find a source for that. V'kanireh she'im yomer shenis ato echad yotzi de'chovas b'diavad. But if he said twice mincha with ato echad, the same nusach, he would be yotzi. The Prima Godim disagrees. It's also named Eshel Avram, which is because it's a commentary on the Magen Avram. In explaining one reason why a person cannot recite Musaf as the Tashlumin for Shachris, right? You notice it was taken as a given that we don't recite Musaf twice, that the Shachris Tashlumin will be made up in Mincha. He points out that the language of Musaf cannot be repeated. Clearly, this means he takes for granted that the Tashlumin is recited using the text of the current tefillah, meaning Ato Echad, not that of the missing tefillah. You cannot, if you miss Shachris, you cannot be mashlim in Musaf. Kemosha Kosav Anachlas Tzvi Sham, the Yire Otan, the Eich Yomer o Musafim Hilchosim Beis Pamim. You can't say, oh, we're offering the Korban Musaf according to the halacha, near a Kamoisif, that then you're being moisif on the mitzvahs. Although the Pri Megadim is discussing the theoretical possibility of making up Shachris at Musaf, he plainly holds that the Tashlumin is recited with its current text, not the make-up text of Yismach Moshe. Rav Yeshayahu Pinchas Rottenberg, in his Shilas and Shuvas Minchas Pri, explains this position as reflecting a larger question. What is the goal of Tashlumin? She'ela zu, this whole question is tluya b'mashi yesh lachkor b'tfilas hashlama. What's the whole purpose of Tashlumin? Iyesod dina ushma katfila shehechsir. Is it making up that tefillah was missed? Oh, sheshema tefillah hu katfila she'oimed bo. Or it's maybe a double mincha now. Ela she'oimed lo tashlumim l'tefillah shehechsir. The double mincha counts for the missed shachris. So it's a chakira. What is the reason behind tashlum? How does it work? Near the pligi b'ze'achronim. The Harishash, Rav Shlomo Strasum, b'brachos chavav kosav, the imlo ispalel mincha, umispalel arvi shtayim, the gabat tefillah abeis yirishus. Remember, shachris and mincha are choiva. Ma'ariv is a rishus. So the Rishash is pointing out that the second Amida that you do during Ma'ariv as a tashlumim for the mincha, it's still a rishus. Aval atzlach, the tzlach was the Noida B'Yehuda, ba'omod beis, b'dibra maschil, b'medvarim b'pshitali, the tfilas ha-tashlumim shehi lemincha hi choiva. The tashlumim is not a rishus, but it's a choiva like mincha. The he'ir, and he made the point, Madua shelo yagdim is tfilas ha-tashlumim, shehi lemincha l'tilas arvi shehi rak rishus. It's usually the second Amida that you do that is the tashlumim. So the tzlach wants to know, maybe when you're making up a missed mincha in Ma'ariv, maybe there, the first Amida, the first one essay should be for mincha, because mincha takes precedence because it was a choiv, it's an obligation, while Ma'ariv is only rishus. Yu'urin sham, if you look carefully there, that tzlach soiver, that tashlumim hi mincha. So it comes out that the tzlach is holding that the extra tefillah that you're doing as a tashlumim is really the previous tefillah that you missed. Varishash svir leid, who obviously tashlumim mincha. No, it's two Ma'arivs. That's why he says both of them are rishus. So turns out that this is a machlokes achronim. Thus, if the tashlumim is labeled as a replacement for the previous tefillah, then one who forgot, for example, Shabbos Ma'ariv, would recite the text of Shabbos Ma'ariv when repeating Amida after Shachris. That means on Ma'ariv, he says Ata Kidashta in the middle bracha. But let's say for some reason he missed Ma'ariv, and now he's davening Shachris. So the first Amida is Yismach Moshe. The second Amida, which is going to be the Tashlumim for the previous Ma'ariv, according to that Manda Omar, that says that the Tashlumim is mamish the previous Tefillah, that Manda Omar would hold that you say Ata Kidashta as the second Shmon Esrei. But if the Tashlumim is labeled as the same Tefillah as the one recited at that time, even if it's replacing the prior one, you would recite Yismach Moshe.
What do you do with Yalav Yava?
Well, Yalav Yava would be said the night, you would say Yalav Yava in both
For
Amidot.
both of them.
Well, if it's Rosh Chodesh, it was Rosh Chodesh the night
It was
before,
Chodesh, yeah,
you would say it in both Amidot.
in both.
Well, why, I mean, why, Abe, why would you have a svara not to say it? It's Rosh Chodesh, or it's Chol
No,
Hamoed.
if you say the first one is to be like Mincha, then
Oh, no, also no. You're asking a different question. You're asking a different question. You're saying, if the mincha, you missed mincha, here we talked about
Yeah.
missed Ma'ariv Friday night.
right.
So remember, you Yalav Yava Friday night, Yalav Yava, so there that's
Yeah,
not
no,
Nafka Mina.
I'm talking about Mincha and Marav.
Okay, so mincha and Ma'ariv, so that's totally in the same machlokes. If you hold that your second tashlumim is the previous mincha, then you wouldn't say Yalav Yava. But if it's two Ma'arivs and tonight is
then-
Rosh Chodesh,
Right.
so you would say, or vice versa. If the afternoon was Rosh Chodesh at night, you would not say it. We paskin that you don't say the nusach of the prior tefillah. You say double nusach of the tefillah
what
you're
you're
in,
doing now.
right? That's how
Yep.
we paskin. The Yalkut Yosef and Ish both rule that one recites the same text as the tefillah recited at that time. That's the way we're noying. He says that the Ish Yisrael brings the opinion that you recite the missed tefillah, but the practice is to recite two Yismach Moishes, or two Ato Echats, or two Ata Kidashtas, if you missed Mincha, right? Even though Mincha was Friday, and Shabbos is Shabbos, you say double Ata Kidashtas. Says the Yalkut Yosef, Misha Ta made a mistake, or shenenas, v'lo yispalo arvis below Shabbos. Yispalo shachris shtayim u'v'shtayim yomer yismach Moshe. You have in mind that the second one is the tashlumim. V'im tov omer b'achas mein, bein b'rishon bein b'shnei ata kidashta yotza. He says, b'di'eved, if you made a mistake and you said ata kidashta in either the first Shmona Esrei or the second Shmona Esrei, you're yotzei. Even if you said in both Atikidashta. Sha'atoya b'tfilah Shabbos. V'hichliv shel zu b'zu yotza. If you said Ato Echad, or any of those the middle nuschos by any of the tefillas, you're yotzei. V'chenim ton nenas lo yispal shachris b'Shabbos. Yispal mincha shtayim v'yomer b'shtem Ato Echad. So you could see, you say any of the nuschos for any of the Shabbos davenings will work. Let's close with a machshava. Close this shir with machshava. In the Amid of Mincha of Shabbos, we describe Shabbos as a day of rest, and then delineate the different qualities of the rest. Yom Nucha Ukdusha, it's a day of rest and holiness. La'am Chanasat. Avram Yagel, Avram is happy. Yitzchak Yeranin, Yitzchak sings. Yaakov Uvonav Yanuchuvo. Yaakov rest. Menuchas Ava Unadava. It's a rest of love and gift. Menuchas Emes Vemuna. Truth and faith, Nucha Shalom V'Shalva, a rest of peace and tranquility, V'Hashkeit, serenity, Vetach, security, Menucha Shlema Sha'at HaRotzeh, a perfect rest that you are happy with. Rav Shlomo Levenstein cites the Sefer Shiras David by Rav David Hecksher, who served as a faculty member in Yeshiva Kol Torah, who explains that the final description of Menucha Shlema is a product of the individual's trust in Hashem. Cause of the Sefer Shiras David. Ki Menuchas HaShabbos kshur b'madregas ha'bitachon shel ha'adam. The Menucha on Shabbos is based on how much a person trusts Hashem. Somebody who trusts Hashem completely, ve'eno nishan al binato, doesn't rely on his wisdom, his own personal wisdom. Yachol lios b'menucha shlema b'Shabbos. Such a person can have a perfect rest. Mi shechasula filu mashu. Somebody who's like missing something, even a little bit, especially b'midas habitochen yachol gam b'menuchas haShabbos. He will lack this perfect rest. Kihu do'eg al atido. He's worried about the future. Ma yeh achar haShabbos. Lachein. La'achar shemazkirim, menucha shalom v'shalva, v'hashket v'vetach, anu oimer menucha shleima shaterot zepa. That it comes down to having a perfect menucha. Ki menucha sh'Hashem yizbarach rotze ba, Hashem wants us to have a kind of menucha ba b'toch bitochon muchlat. A bitochon, a menucha that comes through complete trust in Hashem. Believe shum da'galati, without any worry about the future. So as we recite these words every Shabbos afternoon, let us pray that over the course of Shabbos, we reach this high level of trust and faith in Hashem, free of the concerns about the coming week. In that manner, the feeling of confidence in Hashem's support will enhance our connection with Him during the rest of the week as well. It's a nice thought. Okay. Page 277. Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. Previous to Shiurim, we studied many of the halachos related to the tefillos on Shabbos. Particularly, we went through the elements that differ on Shabbos from the weekday tefillos. The Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos of the weekly parsha, although it's not technically a tefillah, is an integral part of the Shabbos tefillah experience. In this year, we will learn about some of the halachos of Kriyas HaTorah and Shabbos, as well about the mitzvah of Shnayim Mikra Echad Targum, reviewing the parsha on one's own, with which we will begin. As recorded in Masechta Brachos, Chazal instituted that in addition to the communal Kriyas HaTorah, every individual must read the parsha twice in the original Hebrew and once in the Aramaic translation of Onkelos. Amar Ravuna bar Yehuda Amar Reb Ami, La'olam yashlim adam parshiyosov v'matzibur shnai mikra v'echad targum. Everyone should complete, the tzibur is going to read a Torah portion. And during the week prior to Shabbos, you're supposed to go through the parsha twice, and the Aramaic translation, afilu atarot v'divon, even the words in Midbar, tarot divon yatzer nimrach cheshbon ela les svam nevon be'on, shekol ha'mashlim parshat matzibur marchel on yomim v'shavim. It's a skula for arichas yomim. Rashi explains that this verse specified by the Gemara has no Aramaic translation. It's names of places that are identical in Hebrew and Aramaic. Accordingly, the Gemara mentions this verse to introduce the chidush that although there is no need to repeat the same words a third time, the obligation of Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum still applies even by there. Right? Afila Tars V'Tivon She'en Bo Targum. The Rishonim discuss whether other translations besides Onkelos may substitute for the Aramaic translation of Onkelos. For example, may one fulfill the mitzvah by reading the English translation instead of going through Onkelos. Tosfos rules that the institution was made specifically to read the translation of Onkelos, as it contains important explanations beyond just the translation into English. Onkelos was a Tana. Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum, says Tosfos there in Brachos Ches, Yesh Meforshim V'Adin Lelo Alos Belaz Shelahen Avi Kamot Targum Shem Meforsh L'Pamim. Some say that if you just translate the Torah to another language, that's similar to reading Onkelos. Ki Kamosha Targum Mefarish Lam Haaretz, Just like in the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara, the Amei Haaretz did not understand Hebrew. They understood Aramaic. So at that time, the Targum Unclus was like an art scroll English translation for them at that time. To those that were unlearned, Kihemi v'nimi torchalaz, but v'lo nihira. Tosfos says I don't agree with this. I don't think this is acceptable, i.e., to replace Unclus with a vernacular translation. Sharia Targum Ufaresh b'masha in lilmod min ha'ivri. There are certain explanations in the Unclus that are beyond what the Hebrew tells us, many places. Rav Yosef says, Megillah Gimel Amud Aleph, if it wasn't for Targum Unclus, we wouldn't understand what the Pasuk is telling us. The third repetition shouldn't be in another language, says Tosfos. It should be in Aramaic Unclus. So that's Tosfos. The Rosh and other Rishonim write that Rashi's commentary on the Torah can be read in place of the translation of Unclus, as it explains the whole Torah. If you read the commentary on the Torah, which is of course Rashi, now, look at the footnote. Although the Rosh does not spell out explicitly that he is referring to Rashi's commentary, his son Rav Yaakov ben Arosh, the Tur spells it out in Siman 285. However, as Rashi does not in fact explain every word of the Torah, right? Rashi isn't on every word. The explanation of the Rosh is somewhat difficult to understand. Perhaps he means that in many instances, Rashi explains the particular meaning of individual words, and the Rosh uses an imprecise formulation when he explained. The Mishnah Berurah, Magen Avraham, offers slightly different explanations for the value in using Rashi as the Targum, either because the Rashi is based upon the explanation of Chazal, or that it explains many psukim in greater detail than the Targum. The Smag, the Sefer Mitzvahs Gedolos, cites other commentaries who agree with the Tosfos that you must read it be'unclus, in Aramaic. Says the Smag, Bani Danti Lifnei Raboisai, he made the argument in front of his rabbis, Shaperush Shmuel Yoser min Targum, that Rashi, or just a perush, a commentary, is better than Unclus. V'hoidu li Raboisai. My teachers agreed, but v'lo nira Rabbeinu Yitzchak. But Rabbeinu Yitzchak didn't accept it. V'chein Omer Rav Amram, which was Rav Avram Goyen, Sheheshiv Rav Natrunoi, that Rav Natrunoi responded, Davka Targum, Shezach Linosim B'Sinai, that it was even given at Sinai. Kidemashma Perakama de Megillah. The Shulchan Aruch writes that one may study Rashi's commentary instead of the Targum. He concludes that a God-fearing individual should read both Unclus and Rashi to satisfy all views. Im lomad parsha beperush Rashi, chashuv kamo Targum. V'yerei shamayim yikra Targum v'gam perush Rashi. So that's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. The Mishnah Berurah explains to us the advantage of learning both. Ki Targum yesh lo mala, the advantage of Targum, shenitein b'Sinai, was given at Sinai. V'gamu mefarish kol milu mila, and it's a translation of every word. Uperish Rashi yesh lo mala, Rashi has an advantage. To mefarish ha'inyan, he explains the sugya al pi midrashei Chazal yoser me'at Targum, more than the Targum. Uve'emes kein roi linog l'chol adam. Therefore, the Mishnah Berurah says it's a good common practice for everybody. Sheyilmod b'chol shavua sidrin perish Rashi levada Targum. You should read the Targum and Rashi. כי יש כמה פרשיות בתורה בפרט בחלק ויקרא, שאי אפשר להבינם כלל על ידי תרגום לחוד. Many sections in Sefer Vayikra we would not be able to understand with Targum only. The Mishnah also points out that if one reads Rashi instead of the Targum, he must read those verses which do not have any commentary of Rashi 3 times. Rashi, that'll only work for the psukim that Rashi comments on. You should read them 3 times. Rav Ben Sion Abba Shul writes that in order to fulfill one's obligation, according to all views, one should also read the Targum Yerushalmi on these verses. You should read the pasuk 3 times. Kidin pasuk she'en bo Targum, like a pasuk that doesn't have unclis. Ukama pasuk Ruven v'Shimon shekori sholosh pamim k'mo shekosav atur sham. Mikol mokom yikra gam ken is Targum Yerushalmi shemuva b'Targum unclis sham k'day latzes l'chol hadeis. Like Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. That's a pasuk. So you have to read that 3 times because it doesn't have Targum, just Hebrew names. Rav Abba Shol explains that the additional words that appear in Targum Unclis on certain psukim were in fact inserted from the Targum Yerushalmi. This explains how Rashi states in his commentary on the Gemara that the words Atarot Divon have no special Targum, whereas the printed Targum Unclis does contain additional words. What's Rabbi Abba Shaul is saying that comes from the Targum Yerushalmi. Consequently, Rabbi Abba Shaul says here that one should read these psukim 3 times, but also read the Targum Unclis Yerushalmi to fulfill all positions. According to these sources, one would not fulfill the mitzvah by reading Shnai Mikra with an English translation, since both Rashi and the Targum contain special qualities that are not present in other translations. Nevertheless, the Ba'er Heitev and the Mishnah Berurah write that one may use translation if one does not understand the Targum or Rashi. Perush Rashi, use Rashi for those who can understand it. Avu mi she'eno barachi doesn't have that talent. Vadei roy likros b'parshas haTorah sheyesh b'lashon Ashkenaz. You should read it in German. Of course, the most famous was Rav Moshe Mendelssohn's Biur, who translated the Torah into German. Kagon Sefer Tzurba, he doesn't quote the Biur. He says the language of Ashkenaz, which was Yiddish, which was the Tzurba. Rav David Feinstein writes that one may read an English translation of Rashi if one does not understand Hebrew Rashi. Yachol latzes b'targum shel Rashi ba'Anglit, al hadrachim sheyachol latzes b'Rashi. Just like you fulfill the mitzvah if you read Rashi in Hebrew, you fulfill it with the translation. A similar ruling is given by others, including Rav Moshe Sternbach in the Chuvas Vanogos. Poskim also dispute whether one must understand the Targum Unclis to fulfill one's obligation with it, at least on a b'diavad level. The lenient approach is taken by Poskim, including Rav Shlomo Zalman, that you should read the Unclis even though you don't understand it. The Magen Avraham writes that hearing the Torah reading in shul can also qualify as one of the readings of Shnai Mikra. However, he writes that ideally one should not rely on this. You shouldn't rely on it because you may not hear every word, and then you won't be yotzei. The Mishnah refers to other achronim who maintain that listening to Kriyas HaTorah cannot count as one of the 2 readings required, even b'diavad. But the Mishnah Berurah agrees that one may read along quietly together with the Baal Koreh. It means if you read it with the Baal Koreh, not just listen to him, to fulfill the mitzvah. Ein b'Magen Avram, Seif Kot Neches, Shekosu b'Shem Lechem Chamudos, the B'diavad Yotzei Pamachas b'Mash Shama Mashleach Tzibur. One of these Shnayim Mikra could be fulfilled by listening. V'yesh Achronim Shemachmirim Afilu B'diavad. But there were Achronim who said you're not Yotzei with that. Because Mokom, says the Mishnah, near the Likro Balachash, if silently you read along with the Balkore, Mila b'Mila, Ima Shliach Tzibur, Elachmir B'zeh, then you don't have to be Machmir. You can accept that. Kivan Shemachavin Az Gam Lishmo Kol Teva Piashatz. He's having kavanah to listen to every word. But Magen Avraham Evisham b'Shem Mata Moshe l'Chatchila Nachum Lasos came. B'Kach Kasuv Kam Achronim. Some Achronim wrote that you can read along with the Balkori. Rav Yitzchak Yosef rules that one should not rely on listening to the Balkriya as one of the readings. If necessary, instead recommends reading along quietly together with the Shliach Tzibur, like the Mishnah Berurah. Misha Ashat Chukah Lo B'Yosef. He doesn't have a lot of time. He doesn't have the time to do this. He should read along with the Shliach Tzibur, pasuk b'pasuk, and then read it again at home. Then read the Targum, and that will be v'yotzei chavasa. But listening to it alone is not enough. Other details of this mitzvah. The Mishnah Berurah quotes different views among the Achronim as to the ideal order for reading Shnai Mikra. Bein akriya yesh deus b'zeh ben Achronim. Yesh amim sheyikra kol pasuk beis pa'amim v'targum alav. That means you should read every pasuk twice and then the targum. V'yesh amim sheyikra kol parsha beis pa'amim. You don't read pasuk twice. You read the whole parsha, then you read it again, and then the third time targum. Hainu sheyikra kol parsha psuchos stuma beis pa'amim v'achar ken targum. Means you read it parsha by parsha. Meaning parsha stuma and parsha psucha, not the whole parsha of Lech Lecha, but until either the samech or the pei. And then read it twice and read the targum. The Magen Avraham said, read every pasuk twice. The Sefer Ma'aser Rav, it is shagrona gloimer atagum kol parsha psuchos stuma, that he would read each parsha psucha or stuma twice and then the targum. Or achar mokum shenir yoitzer hefsek inyan, or where there was a break in the subject matter. V'diavad kamar avid or v'diavad kamar avid. If you did it like either, you're yotzei. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky used a compromise method of one time dividing the parsha into sections, and the next time reading each pasuk individually. So he did it both. The Aruch HaShulchan offers a third suggestion, based upon the Or Zarua, who was a Rishon, that one may read the entire weekly parsha all at once, read it again, and then read the Targum of the whole parsha. Yesh Shekorin Kol HaSidra, V'achakach Pam Sheni, V'achakach HaTargum. V'chein Mavur Medivrei Or Zarua Gadol, L'chein Nir Lanias Daiti De'en Kpeda, but he says he doesn't think it makes a big difference. V'yachal Asus Kamoshi, you can do what he wants. The L'kulam Yesh Ponim Balacha. Every approach has a good face, has a basis. He can switch it around. Sometimes you can do it this way, sometimes that way. If there was a special way of doing it, says the Aruch HaShulchan, the Rishonim would have been silent. They would have told us or admonished us, do it this way. The poskim also discuss whether the two readings of Mikra must precede the Targum, Or one may read the Targum in between. From the Mishnah Berurah side in the previous source, one may infer that in the opinion of many poskim, one should read the Targum after reading the Mikra twice. The Aruch HaShulchan addresses this, citing the Lavush, who permits reading the Targum in between. Yesh topic. It's questionable. You have to read the Parsha twice and then the Targum. If you made a sandwich, it also works. In fact, the Lavush says to do it that way. The Lavush gives very practical. At home, on Friday, whenever a person does it, he reads his Parsha with the Targum. Then when he goes to shul, he reads word for word with the Baal Koire. He was Mekayim, Shnai Mikra, Vecha Targum. The Chazon Ish also permits reading the Targum in between the two readings of Mikra. The Aruch HaShulchan argues that even the Beis Yosef, who does not allow fulfilling one's obligation with the reading of the Baal Kriya, agrees as well. He explains that the Beis Yosef was opposed only to fulfilling the obligation through listening to Baal Kriya, but he would agree that if one recites the words together with the Baal Kriya, one does fulfill the mitzvah. And then see the Chut HaShani, who attests that the Chazon Ish himself performed Shnai Mikra in this manner, where he did the Parsha, he did the Targum, then he laned word for word with the Baal Kriya. And there's in the Dirshu edition of the Mishnah Berurah, he cites the Makor Chaim that this is even the ideal manner of doing it. According to the lenient opinions, then, one is permitted to read the Mikra once, read the Targum, and then read along together with the Baal Kriya and Shul on Shabbos morning as the second reading of Mikra. The Beis Yosef quotes a discussion regarding whether one must also read Shnai Mikra and Yontiv, which may relate to the reason for the institution of Shnai Mikra in general. The Beis Yosef cites the Trumas Hadeshen and Rabbeinu Hananel, both Rishonim, that the purpose may be to be familiar with the section of the Torah read during Kriyas Torah. If so, perhaps this obligation applies to the Yom Tov readings as well. However, the Beis Yosef notes that many other authorities did not read Shnai Mikra on Yom Tov. Because of Moreinu Rav Yisrael, Biksova, the Trumas Hadeshen, the Davka Parshas HaShabbos Chayv Lahashlim, that it's only the weekly reading. Aval in Tzarech Likros Parshas Yontif, you don't have to do Shnai Mikra Vecha Targum on the Parsha that was going to be read on Yontif. Al Bishakosov de Leferish Rabbeinu Chananel Efshar Shetam Shechayv Lahashlim Parsha, even though, according to Rabbeinu Chananel, he explained that the whole point of this, so that he would be familiar with what the Baal Koire is going to lane. Based on that svara, you would think that you'd have to read Shnai Mikra Vecha Targum by the Parshas of Yontiv. Umusafim, Kvar Kosav the Lishar Gaonim ain't Tzarech. According to the Gaonim, you don't need to. And the minig was not to do this, and that's the common practice of the Klal Yisrael. The Shulchan Aruch concludes that one need not prepare for Kriyas on Torah and Yontif by reading Shnai Mikra. Ein tzarich likros Parshas Yontif. The Magen Avram explains that this is because one already reads the whole Torah during the year, each weekly portion during the relevant week. The Aruch HaShulchan cites the Lavush, who understands that the purpose of Shnai Mikra is to become proficient in the Torah. According to this, one would not read Shnai Mikra and Yontif, since one proficiency in that parsha was already achieved when you lane Parshas Emor or Parshas Re'eh, whatever, or Parshas Achrei Mos during the year. So the fact that it's repeated on Yom Kippur, you already became proficient in it. The Aruch HaShulchan then suggests an alternative reason for the institution of reading Shnai Mikra. First of all, we don't know the real reason behind this halach. Likros b'Torah. Who was it that made the takana to read? It was Moshe Rabbeinu. So at that time, Tiken Gam Ken Takana Zu. It's Moshe Rabbeinu who must have been misakin this takana. It's called Echad Yikra Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. Ve'alavush kosav, K'dei Sheyei Baki b'Torah. Lavush says, we want you to be proficient in Torah, Ayin Sham. Vein must be kamuvan. That's not enough of an explanation. V'nir da'achiv b'Torah, Hashmiya v'limud, there's a chiv in Torah to listen, to learn, k'moshe omim, b'birchas ava, lishmoa l'lamed, b'nei hashmiya yi b'Shabbos, m'sefer Torah k'sheira. You fulfill the shmiya by hearing the laning with your ears from a kosher sefer Torah. Ksuva kedas ukaloch, lachein yilmod, mikodim, and then the lishmoa l'lamed, the l'lamed part is fulfilled with the Shnai Mikra. V'Echad Targum, right? Be prior to the Shabbos. B'chumash v'yala b'kodesh lishma m'sefer Torah. The Ramah adds that there's also no obligation to read the Haftarah in preparation, although there's a custom to do so. Ein tzarach likros Haftarah. Mikol makom no likros Haftarah. The Mishnah explains that it was customary to read the Haftarah in case one is called to read it for the congregation on Shabbos. So to become proficient in it, you learned the Haftarah as well. When may one start and finish reading the Parsha? Is it only on Shabbos? Is it on Friday? Is it the whole week? We saw above that the Gemara says that a person must complete Shnai Mikra with the congregation. It's a very ambiguous phase, explained by Tosfos to mean that one may start each week's reading following Minchad Shabbos when the new Parsha is first read in Shul. You can start the process already Mincha the previous week when you lay in the next week's Parsha. Yashlim Parshiyos Matzibur. Nira, the Kol Shavua. You can use the whole week to do this. Mikeva the Matchila Likros a Parsha, Mincha Shabbos, Ve'elech, Ad Shabbos Sabah, Nikros Matzibur. The Kolbo quotes Rabbeinu Peretz, a Rishon, who argues that one cannot start fulfilling his personal obligation to read the Parsha of the next Shabbos until the previous Shabbos is terminated. Notwithstanding that the Tzibur begins to read next week's Parsha at Minchan Shabbos. Im Chazra Parsha me'echad b'Shabbos, Yotza. You have to start Shnai Mikra v'Echad Targum on Sunday. The Shaper Mikra Minat Tzibur. That's what's meant that the Tzibur starts reading. Shekvar Cheschilu Parsha b'Shabbos b'Mincha. Right? The Tzibur started reading the Parsha, the next week's Parsha Shabbos Mincha. The Davka miyom echad ve'elam. You got to start Saturday night only. Sunday would start Saturday night. Aval b'Shabbos b'Mincha filo achrei shekaro Parsha b'Tzibur lo yotza. If you start your Shnai Mikra even after the Tzibur laned the Parsha Mincha Shabbos, it's not enough. Lo yotza. Kiven shemos vayom karo Parsha Shavra. Right, that morning they laned last week's Parsha. Kach nir l'Rabbeinu Peretz. And the Shulchan Aruch writes, in accordance with the Chumrah of Rabbeinu Peretz, that the earliest time to start reading the Parsha is on Sunday. Right? B'yom Rishon ve'elech chashuv matzibur. The Mishnah Berurah writes that the Shulchan Aruch did not mean this precisely. In fact, concurs with Tosfos that one may start from Minchan Shabbos. B'yom Rishon ve'elech. Kiven shemaschile b'minchasa de Shabta likros Parsha Shavua haba. Nechshav shuva korei kekori matzibur. The Mishnah Berurah seems to say that if you start reading from Mincha Shabbos, it's good. He thinks it's not precise. There's some basis for this assumption. Mishnah Berurah is in the base. If you see the base Yosef, because he references Tosfos, not the Kolbo, that's where the Mishnah Berurah thinks that it's lav davka what the Shulchan Aruch says. Contemporary poskim follow this ruling of the Mishnah Berurah. Rav Ovadia Hadai rules stringently, found the Kolbo, and the literal interpretation of Shulchan Aruch. He claims that even Tosfos do not disagree with this understanding. But there's some debate as to whether one must wait until after davening mincha itself. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa writes that this is not necessary. And once the earliest time for Minchas arrived, when they start reading Shnai Mikra for the following week, so you can read the next week Shnai Mincha already when the earliest time for Mincha comes on Shabbos. You don't have to wait until you actually daven Mincha. We know that that's 6 hour and a half. So like on Shabbos, it could be 12:30 p.m., 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Shabbos afternoon, you can already do it. Shekvar roi likros parsha chadosha. Rav Chaim Kanievsky is quoted as disagreeing, maintaining that one must start reading Shnai Mikra only after davening Mincha of Shabbos himself. Regarding the latest time to complete reading Shnai Mikra, Tosfos quotes a midrash where Rabbi Yehuda Nasi instructed his sons to finish before eating. But Tosfos conclude that this is not a strict obligation. Uzman Hashlama Yesh b'midrash Gimel Dvorim Tziva Rabbeinu HaKadosh L'Bona b'shah sheniftar shelo tochlu lechem b'Shabbos ad shetigmru kol haparsha. That means the time limit where you have to complete the Shnai Mikra v'Chatagim. You can't start Yisuda Shabbos and eat bread on Shabbos without finishing Shnai Mikra. Ad shetigmru kol haparsha. Mashma the koydem achila tzarech lashlima. But if you finished it after you ate, it's okay. Says Tosfos. Although Tosfos writes that one may complete the review of the parsha after eating, they do not specify when the latest time for it is. The Tur writes that the absolute latest time is before Mincha and Shabbos. Before you eat your Suda Shabbos, you should finish Shnai Mikra. You should, if you want to do it after eating, fine, but you should finish before mincha. This mincha, you're going to start laning a different parsha, so you cannot do the Shnai Mikra v'Chatargum on the previous parsha. Time of mincha here is understood as the time that an individual recites mincha, and here's Kriyas Torah of the first aliyah of the next parsha himself, regardless of whether other minyanim for mincha exist at a later time. We're talking about you as an individual. You have until you hear mincha and the laning of that Shabbos. If one recites mincha alone without a minyan, after the time that all the local minyanim have concluded, the Ktsos rules that it is not considered to be before mincha, since the Gemara refers to completing Shnai Mikra with the congregation. So that doesn't work if you're at home. Other more lenient views are quoted by the Haggadah Maimonios. But Yeved, im lo yishlim kodem achila b'Shabbos, yachol ashlim ad daled b'Shabbos. That means, even if you didn't complete the Shnai Mikra, and they've moved on in Mincha Shabbos to the next week's Parsha, you can conclude until next Wednesday. Kein matzati b'shem Moiri Rabbi, the Maram of Rottenburg. Because of Rabbeinu Simcha, another Rishon, Aval b'sheikar mitzvah kol parsha b'chol Shabbos im atzibur, im lo asakin yashlim kulam b'shmini atzeres shebo gomer matzibur. Since we finished Simchas Torah, the whole Torah, and let's say you missed 10 parshas, you can read all 10 parshas on Shmini Atzeres. He continues by bringing a proof that it's possible to make up for missed readings from the continuation of the Gemara, quote at the beginning of this year, which says that Rav Bivoy Bar Abaya wanted to complete the parshas of the whole year on Erev Yom Kippur. Chia Bar Rav Midifti only stopped him from doing so because of the mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur, implying that there's no inherent problem making up for missed parshas after the relevant week. So certainly he can go up to Wednesday. The Shulchan Aruch quotes all three of these views. Mitzvah and Ikr, the best mitzvah to do it before you eat on Shabbat. Otherwise, do it before mincha of that Shabbos. You can something go out to Wednesday. You can go even till Simchas Torah. To summarize, according to all of the opinions, one should try to complete reading the Parsha before eating on Shabbos day. But they disagree as to the latest time if one did not complete it by then. The Aruch HaShulchan and other poskim assume that if necessary, one may follow the last few quote and complete the reading of all the missed parshas up until Simchas Torah. The Mishnah Berurah and Bir Alocha says that, but the Chafetz Chaim reviews various opinions concerning the most ideal time to complete Shnai Mikra. According to the Arizal, one should complete the parsha on Friday. According to Beis Yosef, one should begin on Friday and complete on Shabbos, which is similar to what is written in the Shulchan Aruch. According to the Gra, reciting one section of the parsha each day of the week and completing on Friday is the ideal method. Rav Shlomo Zalman is quoted as saying that one may complete Shnai Mikra until he davens mincha himself, not only until the earliest time for mincha. Should women read Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum? In volume 12, Shir 1, we learn that according to the Magen Avraham, women are obligated to hear Kriyas Torah. Since, as we saw earlier in the Shir, Shnai Mikra is linked to Kriyas Torah, according to some opinions, one could argue that they are also obligated to read Shnai Mikra. The majority of poskim reject the Magen Avraham, and in addition, the majority of poskim understand that reading Shnai Mikra is connected to the general mitzvah of learning Torah. We saw that in the Levush and the Aruch HaShulchan, and women are exempt from the mitzvah of learning Torah. Therefore, the poskim conclude that women are exempt from Shnai Mikra, as Rav Yitzchak Yosef explains. The point of this is to learn the Torah. They're potter from this. Even according to the poskim that say women have to listen to Kriyas Torah, Binidon Didan, in this matter, Yodu, they will admit Shebekriya Sefer Torah hu din miyuchad. That's a special din shemitzvah lishmoa, kimo mitzvahs hakel, where women and children were brought. Mitzvahs Kriyas Torah, listening to the Kriyas Torah is the same. Uvefrat l'didan naktin she'en noshim chayavas klal b'shmias Kriyas Torah. So that, according to the opinion, who say they're machayiv in Kriyas Torah, that's a special din like hakel. But we hold that they are not obligated to hear Kriyas Torah. So certainly, there's no issue of Shnai Mikra. Rav Eliezer Melamed in the Pnei Halacha writes that although women do not have the obligation, it is certainly meritorious to perform this mitzvah even without an obligation. Just like they're not obligated to shake the lula, but they shake it. Noshim p'turas b'chovis Kriyas Torah, u'mikriya Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum. But v'im yirtzu lishtatif b'Kriyas Torah l'lomod es ha'parsha nevuah yesh lהם mitzvah. If they come to shul and listen to Kriyas Torah, and they do Shnai Mikra, they get a mitzvah. We will conclude this section on Shnai Mikra with an observation that many individuals today are not careful to read Shnai Mikra on a weekly basis for a variety of reasons. Lack of time, they're not familiar with this halacha. However, the Gaonim stressed that even a Torah scholar must set aside time from his learning schedule to read Shnai Mikra. U'sheshe'elatam, your shaila, that Talmidei Chachamim, he does not want to do Shnai Mikra. And he wants to study his Gemara. Can he do that? Even though he loves learning Gemara, he has to read the Torah portions. In more recent times, Rav Moshe Feinstein also stressed that even yeshiva students who study full-time are obligated in the mitzvah of Shnai Mikra. Hinei b'inyan mitzvah shemachayev kol echad ve'echad likra parsha b'chol shavua. This mitzvah, Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum, shnei strashim ma'od. People don't do this mitzvah. Afetz al harbe b'nei Torah, even by b'nei Torah. Pashutu bor k'mor shelo niftar shum adam mikol mitzvah drabanan. Just like people are not exempt for performing mitzvahs drabanan, because they're learning Torah, so they're not put from here. Even somebody who's a kollel student, somebody, all he does is learn Torah. Technically, they were potter mitfilim rabbanon. Hayuchayavim b'kriyas haparsha Shnai Mikra ve'echad Targum. Ubeprat l'doreinu she'enan echem loimer shanu bikim b'mikra. certainly in our generation, where we can't say that we are Baki and Mikra. So this learning about Shnai Mikra should serve as an impetus to strengthen our fulfillment of this beautiful mitzvah. Okay, next week we'll go into Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos. And the Haftorah.
Very
Thank you
thorough.
very much.
Wow.
Thank you.
Now we got a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have to
not
do it.
enough hours in the day.
You have to do this now, sometimes, Anyway, Ernie, Shkoyach, anyway, everybody should have Gmar Chasima Tova,
Amen.
a great year for Klal Yisrael.
Amen.
And we should have a Yeshua. All the Chatufim should come back soon, and all the Pitzuim should have a Refuah Shleima, and all the Chayalim should have Shoimem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need a big Yeshua this year. So maybe
Amen.
Shnai Mikra.
Maybe. Hey.
Shkoyach, Ernie.
Thank you. Thank you.